I have a question for you. What do the Democrats offer you? What do the Democrats offer America? First on that list is open borders. Secondly, they want to defund the police. Here's another one. Men and women's sports. Your daughters get to shower with a man who fakes to be a woman. Welcome back to Jack's Corner, where truth and reality has a seat at the table. We have some interesting news items to cover, so let's get started. Let's start with Kentucky's Attorney General. Well, true to what I complained about last week regarding Kentucky's AG, in comparison with what other state AGs around the country are doing, they are constantly making headlines by taking on corrupt culture and the Democrat left. It was just reported that Florida's Attorney General proposed that legislation is needed to stop sexual predators from pursuing surrogacy, adoption, and foster care. Now, that is no brainer. But as I criticized Kentucky's AG, I stated that I don't want you to keep thanking me for voting for you last year. I just want to see some action and hear about what you are doing. I want to see some headlines, and I don't want to see Democrats being hired in your office. If you will recall, the Greeks used the Trojan horse to retake the city of Troy. We don't need Democrat enemies within the gates of Kentucky's AG office, as we saw what they did to our last Republican governor. They had their turn, and on the national front, we saw how they almost destroyed the country under Biden. The bottom line is, get with the program. Start being a Republican or let someone else do the job. This was recently in the news, but a new Democrat left talking point that really only needs very brief analysis is Representative Jamie Raskin, Democrat of Maryland, one of the most corrupt pathological liars in the U.S. House, said Thursday on CNN's Out Front that President Donald Trump is weaponizing the Justice Department by conducting a criminal investigation into New York State Attorney General Leticia James' office. Now remember, James campaigned on going after Trump before she took office. She announced that she was going to break the law before she ever became New York Attorney General. Also, she is now under criminal investigation for mortgage fraud and her violation of Trump's constitutional rights. That aside, Raskin said that actions against AG James were part of Trump's political revenge tour. Well, here is the obvious question that should be asked. Revenge for what? Now, if the truth be known, Raskin is one of the biggest promoters of misinformation in D.C. and has been caught numerous times in his own tangled web of lies. But if it was revenge, that would imply that the Democrats did something, and that what Trump is doing is reacting to what the Democrats did in the first place. And let's not forget, everything the Democrat left accused and sued Trump for was thrown out and failed, but at tremendous cost to Trump. Now, once you ask the question, I propose that there is a different discussion altogether. You can't just leave it that Trump is a vengeful person. Frankly, what this is accountability, not revenge. The Democrats were guilty of crimes in how they pursued Trump to prevent him from running for president and to keep the people from voting for him. Let's not forget they tried to jail Trump, bankrupt him, impeach him, and try to kill him. Now, why would anyone who survived all those illegal and criminal actions against him want revenge? I would. But let's not focus on the revenge word until we answer this other question. Were crimes committed against Trump? You bet they were. And the criminals must be held to account so they can never do that to anyone else again. So I don't care what you call it. Let there be accountability first, and then we can worry about definitions later. Now, this next topic has been front and center in the news of late and is very important. Let's talk about Texas redistricting. Before we dive into what is going on in Texas, let's talk about the 8 states where Democrats have totally banned any Republican representation, even though those states are 35 to 43% Republican. Yep, the Democrats have been playing the game of redistricting, obtaining unfair overrepresentation in the U.S. Congress for decades, and the Republicans have been asleep. but have now awakened as to how they have been cheated. How dare the Democrats show their faces and talk about redistricting in Texas as if it is illegal or unconstitutional? What they are really mad about is that the Republicans have finally caught on to what the Democrat left has been doing in the corruption and manipulation of the census, redistricting, and representation. How about California, where of the 52 seats they have in Congress, only 9 are Republicans, even though the state is 40% Republican? You see, folks, the Democrat left is authoritarian by nature and corrupt to the core. They are a danger to life, liberty, and happiness. They can only be happy when they are in total control and rule over you. Let's not forget Illinois and New York and Maryland. The Republican voters there have no representation. Those states have been gerrymandered to the max, practically eliminating any representation of the conservative and Republican voters there. In New York, for instance, let's say you cut off New York City. Well, New York State is practically red then. The same goes for Illinois. Here's the bottom line. There can be no coexistence with the left, as they are psychotic and incapable of coping with differing views and will ultimately oppress or kill you if you threaten their power. Don't believe me? Well, look at what they tried to do to Trump. Don't overlook this fact. One of the reasons the Democrats illegally opened the borders is they flooded the illegals into their states so they could end up with more representation in Congress than they were entitled to, as they were counting non-citizens in their census count. One should be asking, why aren't these people in jail? So to Texas, I say you have every legal right to redistrict as you see fit. And to every other Republican state, you must not delay and follow Texas's course. Now, here's something that the whole nation is dealing with, and it has just turned up in Louisville, Kentucky within the last week. The Democrat left, their appointed judges and prosecutors, are unleashing criminals upon the streets all over our country and in our cities. In a recent case this week in Louisville, Kentucky, there was a home invasion, kidnapping, and robbery. The facts are astounding. About 6 months ago, a Louisville serial robber had been sentenced to 14 years in prison. However, the defense lawyer got the judge to release this serial offender after only 5 months in prison. Just last week, that criminal invaded a home and forced a woman and her 2 children into her car, forced her to drive to her bank and withdraw all of her money, whereafter the woman got stabbed. It turns out that the judge, Jessica E. Green, who was appointed by the leftist Nancy Pelosi-type governor, Kentucky's Governor Andy Beshear, who is planning to run for president, the community was outraged as citizens were living in fear and locking their doors as this criminal was on the loose for several hours. He was finally apprehended, thank goodness. This criminal would not have been released had the Safer Kentucky Act been passed, which the leftist Democrat Governor Beshear vetoed. Folks, it cannot be said enough. The word crime is a Democrat by any other name, or vice versa. How many times do we have to tolerate the Democrat left coddling criminals and releasing them upon society to cause further chaos and harm? Please wake up. Bad people do bad things, and it is expected. That's why we are supposed to lock them up. What is not expected are those who are in authority to protect society, then use that authority to aid and abet criminal activity. As far as I'm concerned, that makes those in authority criminals as well. It's criminal neglect. There has to be accountability for those who commit what I call criminal malfeasance. And when it occurs, they have to be removed from office, and it has to be immediately. Now, in Kentucky, the Republican-controlled House passed House Bill 5 last year, which removed a judge's ability to release anyone who committed a violent crime until he had served at least 85% of his sentence. Every single Louisville Democrat voted against House Bill 5. We must have judicial and jury reform. Here's a part of the problem, aside from lazy voters who never check into the background of those they vote for. We must look at and change the way we select judges. Elections don't work because nobody knows who the candidates are, and not many good attorneys are going to shut their practice down for the chance to win an election. While many attorneys would take a pay cut to serve as a judge at the end of their careers, there aren't many of them who will put themselves through an election. So what we have is a bench full of judges who could not make it in a real world of attorneys. In situations like in Louisville and every city in the country, judges' decisions must be reviewed, and they must be held accountable. Regarding the case at hand, all of that judge's early release decisions must be reviewed. If it is found that this is something that she has consistently done, then there must be an outcry from the public for accountability, and I would say in the form of impeachment. But I would go even further to find out what the attorney and what representations he made to the court were for the shock probation that he got from the judge. Furthermore, how much was he paid, and was there any relationship with the judge? If it is found that the attorney misled the court, then that attorney should lose his license, because the consequence was the subsequent crime and the injuries that took place. We are seeing this same problem on a national level with federal judges that Biden appointed. They are being overturned, but the damage is being done in the meantime. There must be a consequence for this kind of misfeasance. Now, Biden's judgment is near, and he will pay for his crimes eternally. But for those of his ilk, they must be brought to justice now, and some of that is on the way. Now, what can we as citizens do? Well, first, stop electing people like Governor Beshear of Kentucky, who make these types of appointments. And certainly don't let him become your president. You see, the Democrat left is not interested in justice, much less you, but just outcomes that benefit them. But then as far as judges are concerned, for whom you vote, demand your legislators to make these judges run as partisans. Why? Because people don't know who they are voting for in these nonpartisan races. It's a crapshoot. With partisan races, you at least know the candidate's character and policy beliefs to a far greater extent than you do with nonpartisans. It is clear that Republicans support law and order and enforcing the law and support of police. Not so with the Democrats, as you see the consequence all over the country where habitual criminals are being let out by Democrat judges only for the criminals to injure, rob, and kill the innocent. This is where the Democrats need jail time. Also, start placing pressure upon your state representatives, both House and Senate. It has a huge impact on the state level. Everyone has access to the internet these days, and it is easy to find the addresses and phone numbers of your elected officials. So give them an earful, blow up their phones, and demand change in the laws. There are also other organizations for lodging your complaints, like judicial retirement and disciplinary committees, and Citizens for Better Judges, etc. Pick up the phone and then start writing letters. Organize coffee groups in your home and have weekly or monthly meetings at a restaurant for a small group where you support law and order candidates. Also, as a group, you can start letter writing campaigns or petitions and send them to your elected officials. And if they are not on board with disciplining judges and prosecutors, then organize a campaign to remove them from office. This is a grassroots effort, folks. You just cannot elect someone to office, throw them the keys, and say, good luck, and expect anything good to happen. The voters can no longer be AWOL. So as far as the recent incident in Louisville, Kentucky, your city council members need to hear from you now. If that judge in her appointment is only filling out the remainder of a term, then organize to replace her. Remember, the reason you have to keep your doors locked and your garage doors shut and the car locked, it is the failure of the judicial system and the leniency in the laws along with pathological ideologues as prosecutors who let the criminals run free. If you want things to change, it has to start with you. Now, one last item I want to talk about is my being verbally accosted by leftist protesters. Is there any other kind of protester? On Saturday evening in Lexington, Kentucky, the Kentucky Republican Party gathered for its annual Lincoln Day dinner with over 800 people in attendance, along with other dignitaries from around the country. True to form, the misfits and losers of society showed up with their placards and signs protesting and shouting, "Shame on you," and "due process," as if they knew what it meant, and it's unconstitutional, etc., etc. Yes, I had to cross the protesters' line, but they accomplished nothing. In fact, it really made me glad, as all it did was motivate and harden the conviction of those in attendance. I recently posted an article on the psychology of protesters and how we know them to be mentally ill. Studies have been conducted concluding that they are incapable of processing facts and reality in a syllogistic way that leads to a correct and productive outcome. They are given over to an authoritarian ideology. Their character is they cannot tolerate dissent or a difference of opinion. Listen carefully and you will be able to discern who and what they are, because they will project upon you what they are and what they are planning. Their biggest trigger is when you ask them a question. I have experienced this so many times. It's as if when you ask them a question, the first problem with which they are confronted is they haven't the facts or the competence to answer it. They immediately get triggered and become emotionally explosive. Secondly, they view it as a threat to their validation, and they are so egotistically fragile and emotionally unstable that they spin off into a tirade of name-calling. And you guessed it, you are then a Nazi, a racist, some kind of a phobia like homophobe or transphobe, and let's not leave out white supremacists. What's funny there is that they will even accuse conservative blacks as being guilty of white privilege. That's kind of rich in a way, as it has also been psychologically established that the left is profoundly anti-African American and Asian. It has never been easier for you to discern evil than now. They no longer have a cloak or the camouflage of compassion or fairness. They've discarded it. They think they have won the game. But as usual, the left always overplays their hand, and they did in the 2024 elections. Don't miss this opportunity. You can now see them as they are and for what they are. So make a mental note and do your best to make sure that they do not hold any position of power or authority. Make your own list if you must, but what really makes it easy for you is that they go by the name of Democrat. Okay, I lied. I have one more thing that I want to talk to you about, and I have a question for you. What do the Democrats offer you? What do the Democrats offer America? So let me give you a list and see if you identify with any of these. First on that list is open borders. That's what they support, allowing nearly 20 million into the country, including criminals. Since Trump closed the border and began deportations, American wages have gone up for the first time in decades. Secondly, they want to defund the police, or they did. Crime skyrocketed as officers left the force and others didn't enlist. Police departments around the country are short of personnel that they need. Third, they don't want any voter ID. So your citizenship is basically worth no more than an illegal. Fourth thing that they brought you is transgender children and drag queen story hour for your kids. Yeah, if you didn't transition your kids, after they had been indoctrinated by their teachers, then the state could take your kids from you. Another thing that the Democrats gave you is sanctuary cities. Now, this has an interesting history because this is a nullification of the Constitution, which is exactly what the Confederacy did in the South prior to the Civil War. Yep, the same Democrats, the same sickness. Another item the Democrats gave you and support is abolishing border control. That's ICE. Another one is gun confiscation. They don't want you to be able to protect yourself after they have hollowed out the police departments in your community. Another item that the Democrats supported and pushed is no cash bail. Criminals are released back out onto the streets the same day they are caught. How about student loan forgiveness? If you didn't go to college or you paid for your own college education, guess what? You got to pay for someone else. Another thing that the Democrats supported was opposition to DOGE. They attempted to stop the elimination of waste, fraud, and abuse. And we saw how much abuse there was out there and how much fraud. Here's another one, men and women's sports. Your daughters get to shower with a man who fakes to be a woman. How about this one, abortion on demand with no restrictions? In some areas, even after birth. And here's another one, DEI. People of color get preferential treatment. It's reverse racism. This sums up the Democrat Party totally. which has been taken over by the radical leftists and communists. They have nothing to offer you. They have revealed who they are after all these years pretending to be red-blooded Americans. They're not. They have been taught to hate America. After all, how could you support any of what I have just listed? Let's be very plain and blunt. The Democrat left are out of touch with reality. But more than that, they are the incarnation of evil. If you can't see that after the list that I just gave you, I don't need to discuss anything further with you, as you are clinically suffering from a psychosis, a derangement, a detachment from the truth, if not just evil and being a bad person yourself. The Bible tells us not to even argue with a fool, and I don't. Once they reveal and tell you who they are, then your mission is clear. It's on you from there. When people complain to me, my first question is, who did you vote for? If the answer is wrong, then I have no time for you. Sadly, many will not do what is right until they suffer for their mistakes and error. Then you have the Democrats, and they never learn. Now that I have defined the Democrats, do you really have anything in common with them? Do they really have anything to offer you that will benefit you or your life? It's on you now. Well, folks, that's it for now. Thanks for your joining us, and don't forget to check out our Bluegrass Chronicles for more in-depth content. Until next time, I'm Jack Richardson for Jack's Corner.